We are continuing working in percentages here. And in this case, we're going to use translations as we work through these word problems. So previously, we learned about how to move between fractions, decimals, and percentages, and then also what percent means. And now we're going to start working with application problems, word problems that we have to solve. Okay, so for a couple of translations, we have what. Well, in the English language, what always translates to a variable, and the variable can be anything. It could be X, it could be Y. Percent is always something over 100. What percent? Well, if we put those two things together, right, we have our variable. And I'll go ahead and put, I don't know, X as an example for the variable. So what, that's our X percent, that translates to X over 100. And then of always means multiply, which I'll use a dot there, but you could also use a percentage, or you could also use parentheses, right, to indicate multiplication. Okay, so for the first one here, we have write an equation and solve it to answer each question. Round decimals to the 100th place. Translation is going to lead to that equation, and the reason I really like to use translation for these is when you translate, you end up with the equation that you need. So if needed, go ahead and write those translations down, right? I'll scroll here so that you can refer to those as we go through this. So for the first one, we have 12. Ooh, and I left out this very important one. That is. And that is always your equal sign. So don't forget that one. All right, so we have 12 is 15%. Well, we know that the percent is something over 100, so we get 15 over 100. Of is multiply, and what number is X? See how nicely that lays out? Those who follow this process of translating and literally just do an English word or symbol, right, like a number that translates directly to a mathematical symbol, they learn this very successfully. So please don't underestimate this process of labeling. So I'm just rewriting this in a format that will make it easier for me to solve. I've got X, which doesn't have a visible denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and put that over 1. And then I'm going to start my process, right, for actually working through this. Now I see that 15 over 100 actually can reduce, right? So let's see, 5 goes into 15 3 times, and 5 goes into 100 20 times. So I'm going to do that reduction so that I know that my answer is, well, at least partially reduced. I just like working with smaller numbers whenever I can. So now I have 12 equals, I do my multiplication and I get 3x over 20. I've got two fractions. The whole number doesn't look like a fraction, right? And so that's why we want to put that over 100. And now I'm going to do cross multiplication. So we're back to something that we've done before, right? When we were setting up proportions and then solving proportions, we used cross multiplication. So 20 times 12, right? That's the first multiplication that I need to do. So 20 times 12 is 240 equals 1 times 3x gives me 3x. Now I divide by 3 to get x by itself, right? So that goes away. I divide by 3 and I get x equals 80. Double check that it's not asking you for what percent, because again, if you're solving for a percent, you would have to include a percentage sign on your answer. But in this case, it's just what number? Well, that's 80. So you do not include a percent in your final answer. All right, so go ahead and at least try the translation part for B and then write your equation out. So pause the video for a second and try translating. Turn it back on and watch me go through it. Okay, so what number? That is a number that we don't know, so that's going to be x is equals 5%, so that's 5 over 100 of, right, 100, which is 100 over 1. So here I get x equals 5 over 100 times 100 over 1. Now notice, because of the order of everything, the variable's already by itself. So I just need to get everything fully simplified and I will have my answer. I'm multiplying, so I'm looking to see things I can cancel, and I notice those hundreds go away. So I'm left with x is 5. Okay, what number? So it's not a percent that I'm solving for. So that means that I can't have a percentage symbol in my answer. Go ahead and pause the video and try C, and then go ahead and turn it back on. So translating, I have 75 is, there's that what percent, and remember I said that that is your what, which is x, over 100, of, which is multiply, and then 85 over 1. Now I'm going to rewrite this in a format that I can start working with it more easily. But again, I love that translation process because basically once you translate, you have the format that you need. Not all translation problems are like that, but because this is multiplication and everything, right, it makes it a lot easier because the order in multiplication doesn't matter because of the commutative property. Okay, so I see that we can cross cancel 100 and 84. So it looks like 4 can go into 100 25 times, and 4 can go into 84 21 times. So that results in 75 equals 21x over 25. I'm going to put the 1 under the 75, right? And now I can cross multiply. So 25 times 75 gives me 1,875. And that gives me 21 times 21x gives me 21x. So now I divide by 21. Now all of my answers need to be decimals, right? Because it's specified round answers to a given decimal. So rather than having to reduce this, I can just divide it out. And I believe it said to round, I'm going to scroll up here and it says round decimals to the 100th place. All right, so I'm going to scroll back. It's always good to double check, right, when you are coming up with your final answer that you know where you need to round. Okay, so the 100th place, which is 2 places to the right of the decimal. So I need to have at least 1 place further than that to know how I'm going to round. So my final answer here is 89, and 29 hundredths. Notice this one, though, is what percent. So we just came up with a percentage, so we have to include the percent sign. And that's your final answer. All right, go ahead and pause the video and try C, D, and F, and then go ahead and turn it back on. All right, so because we are dealing with multiplication and division in these problems, I have to convert that mixed number in D to an improper fraction. We're getting nice practice of doing these. So we have 3 times 4, which is 12, plus 2, which is 14. So that becomes 14 over 3 is, Now we have 12% of what number? Now previously we were doing 12 over 100, right, to show the percent or getting rid of the percent. But we've also converted percentages directly to decimals. So for this one, I'm going to show you how you can go ahead and do that. So that was where we took the decimal and we moved it over twice because we're dividing by 100. So I end up with that, and then of what number? Now I don't have to have that dot for multiplication, but because I'm translating, I just included it there. If I were to rewrite this, which I probably will, I would just drop that dot because the x can sit right next to that 1200th. So I'll go ahead and do that. Let's see. Now also, because our answers are decimals, I'm going to go ahead and divide out the 14/3 and see what I get there, which is going to be a repeating number. So this is a good example of how I'm showing that I've rounded it on paper, but I'm keeping all of the places in my decimal on my calculator so that I can get as accurate an answer as I can. Now I need to get the x by itself, so I'm going to divide by the 1200ths, divide by the 1200ths. Okay, so divide by 1200ths, and x equals, this is another repeating decimal, 8, right? And it keeps going, but we're rounding to the 100th. So that's that spot right there. So x equals 38/89. We're looking for a number, not a percent. So that is your final answer. All right, and E, I'm going to go ahead and do the translation, but I'll do it below just for space. Sometimes it could be helpful to actually use a different color as you're translating, and then you can drop down, right, and write the equation that you're going to be solving. So that's something you can try. All right, so I have 25 is what percent, which is x over 100, of 275, and I'm going to go ahead and put that over 1. All right, let's see. I'm going to cross cancel. So 25 goes into both of those. So 25 goes into 100 4 times. So 4 is left over, and 25 goes into 275 11 times. Now, just so I don't forget, I'm going to put that 1 under the whole number. I get 25 over 1 equals 11x over 4. Now, something that I want to mention is notice how I put that variable in the numerator. I can actually write that 11x over 4 as this, equals 11/4 x. And you can always do that if your variable's in the numerator. For cross multiplying, I like this way first, the 11x over 4, but if you're going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is another method that we talked about for solving problems like this, writing it as 11/4 x can be helpful. Now, because we haven't done it for a bit, we've been focused on cross multiplying because for a lot of people, that's a newer strategy, and I want you to focus on learning how to do that. I haven't been doing the multiply by a reciprocal. So this one, I'll go ahead and do that just so you can remember that that in fact is an option. So doing that, we would multiply both sides by 4/11. Hopefully this still looks familiar. The 4's go away, the 11's go away. So now on the left-hand side, I have 100 over 11 equals x. Now, if we were looking for a fully reduced fraction for our answer, we would leave it like this, but since it's told us we need to round our answers to the 100th place, it means that we need a decimal answer. So this one is 9, and then we have 9 and... Okay, so I took it to the 1,000th place, one place further than where I need to round. So that means that my answer is 9 and 900th percent, because again, it's a what percent question. So make sure to go back and double check that. And F. All right, so what number is, right, that's this right here, 7%. Again, I'm going to convert straight to a decimal, but you could go ahead and do a fraction and use that as well. I just want to remind you that you do have a choice on those. You'll get to a point where you likely have a preference as to which way you do it, and that's absolutely fine. Now, yes, I'm going to use a decimal, but I'm also going to do the 7/100 and show the movement of that decimal, right? So 1 and 2, because those single digit decimals are the most frequently missed in terms of the placement of the decimal. There has to be a 0 between the decimal and the number because it's a single digit percent. So I would encourage you to always do that fraction and show the movement of the decimal until you're regularly getting that correct. Easy mistake to make, and you just have to make sure you're practicing it correctly every time. All right, so this was the conversion of the 7% of 140. I'll call them lazy decimals. And so usually when I'm showing multiplication with decimals, I use parentheses because my decimals and multiplication dots can look similar, and it keeps me from confusing myself, which always seems like a good idea to me. All right, so X is, we get 9 and 8/10. Now it's said to round to the 100th. This is rounded to the 10th. So we need to put a 0 there so that that number is in the correct format. Notice it says what number, so we do not need a percentage on that answer.